Hello, and welcome to the Passion Driven Pioneers interview series. I'm your host, John Channon, and today I'm joined by Paul Mooty, who is the Vice Chairman and Partner of Faribault Mills. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So would you mind just getting us started with a brief background as to who you are, what you do, and the business that you're in?
Sure. Well, again, Paul Mooty. I'm involved with Faribault Mill. We back in 2011, the mill closed in 2009. In 2011, by happenstance, I was invited by a friend because his dad was going to look at it, asked me to go take a look at it with him, and I went down there. And that was March 8th of 2011. And so, long story short, by April 22nd of that year, my cousin and I had a letter of intent to buy the assets of the mill. There's a lot of stuff that happened in between there that got us to the decision point. Some part of it was they said there was a group from Pakistan that wanted to buy all the equipment. So they said, if you guys want to do this, you got to do it fast. So this was a quick decision process, but we just felt a company with, at the time, 145-year history, making a made in America product, and certainly in Minnesota, the upper Midwest, or anywhere in this country, everyone has a blanket. And certainly up here, everyone's got one in their trunk too. So, felt it, and, a natural resource, a renewable resource, or a lot of aspects of it that really compelled us. But, a brand, as we all know in business, brand is, people spend a lifetime building a brand of a business. And we felt if we could get this going, we would be starting, the 100-yard dash with a bit of a head start, because the name Faribault Woolen Mill was a name that was known, since the 1865 starting, but it was a very well-known name, and that was kind of what got us there. But I was been involved in business. I went to the U of M. I went to a business school, and then I went to law school, and then I worked for a big accounting firm in the tax area, and then practiced law. And I just found I wanted to be on the other side of the table. I just seemed like the other side of the table seemed more fun. And I have a family, dad, uncle, some grandparents and cousins that are very entrepreneurial and business minded. And so I think I had a bit of that in me. And so then got involved in some business opportunities, and found that was the breadth of what I was doing was, it's kind of the blessing and the curse. You get to see everything, but you have to deal with everything, as opposed to professionally, you might be in a little more narrow swim lane. And as you well know, in the business world, small business or starting things, you wear every hat, whether they fit or they don't.
That's absolutely true. So you mentioned you were just kind of going to visit this. Was there
Yes.
a spark when you were there that all of a sudden said, yes, this is the right business for me?
Yes, that's a great question, because in all honesty, when I went there, we got there, as they said, it had been closed. And the fellow who gave us the tour was living on the property and caretaking it, and hoping that someone would buy it. He'd worked there 40 years, textile expert. And as we went in, we weren't there 5 minutes, and he was taking us down to the lower level, and part of the building is from the 1890s. And he says, now, there was a flood here last fall, a 500-year flood, and there was 10 feet of water in the basement. He said, there were barrels of dye down here that opened, so there's chemical residue everywhere. Don't touch anything. I got to the bottom of the stairs, and I'm looking around. It was a nightmare, and I thought, what am I doing here? I said, this is it's a 175,000 square foot building. It's old, and it was just a mess. And I thought, and this is true. I would have left right then had I driven myself, but I had ridden down there with other people, so I had to stay, which was fortunate. 2 hours later, after Dennis had given his tour, he'd washed away the way it looked right then, and told the story about what the mill was and what he hoped it could continue to be. And I went home and said to my wife, I said, I was down at the woolen mill, and I said, it's quite a mess, but I said, what a story. I said, I really, something captured me from Dennis's talking about the history of the mill and what it did. And so it was that. And then, because then I talked to my cousin later in the month, and then I went on a spring break trip and came back, and I said, because I had said, go look at this while I'm gone. And he was interested. And then one day we were down there, just the two of us, walking around, just the two of us. And I was thinking in my mind, I was just processing, and Chuck started laughing, and he said, Paul, I think we can do this. And I said, Chuck, that was the same thought was just going through my head. And
Wow.
so it was, this was not a MBA style analysis of, a business plan and projections and all the things that you would learn in business school. It was a lot of gut instinct. And so we decided we're going to do it. And so on July 5th of 2011, we started with 5 people. 3 of us knew nothing about textiles. And by the end of the year, we had about 40 employees, 35 of which were, had worked there from anywhere from 5 to one lady, 63 years. And so a lot of great talent came back. Without them, it was not possible. I mean, it took everything. It took reinvestment, but it took the people that came back together in the community, which was incredibly supportive of seeing the mill lights go back on. So it's a little longer answer than maybe you were looking for, but that's how we got there. I mean, I want to say it was that simple, because once it got going, it wasn't that simple, but it was the getting there was. And one other thing, when my wife and I drove down there over a weekend, and we just were driving around a building, and she says, "Oh, we've got to do this." And I said, "You've got to go inside first." I said, "You haven't seen what it is." And then eventually, a week or so later, we did, and she loved it as well. And there's just something about it that just pulled us in. And a lot of people looked at it, kicked the tires, and said, "Not for me. Maybe bridge too far, mountain too tall." But we felt it was 2 things: business opportunity and a mission opportunity. Mission to do something good, bring back some American manufacturing, and also do and hopefully create a good business that would be try to have a nice return and do something good. But it was truly a twofold purpose. It was just not business driven.
So you're essentially restarting a business that had been shuttered for a period of time. What were the first few priorities that you guys had that you've really focused on to kind of get this thing back up and going?
Yeah, a couple of things. One was on the personnel front. Was the 2 of the people that were with us, that those first 5, 2 of them were people with 30, 40 years of textile experience, and they had worked there. They knew all the former employees, so they were able to call them all up. And one day we had them in the conference room. The building at the time, there was no limited electric for the boiler. There was limited heat. The plumbing didn't work. So everyone's kind of shivering in this room, and people looking at us like, "Who are you guys? And, why should we trust you?" Sort of, a little bit of, kind of peering over the fence at us. But, we talked through it and talked about what we wanted to do. And then so it was people was the first, and then the building was in significant challenging situation. And we were able to rather quickly apply to have it listed on the National Register of Historic Places. I mean, one, it is, and so it's nice to have that designation, but there were also some state and federal tax credits that we were able to access to help with the work we were doing. So the building, literally from the basement to the roof, boilers, plumbing, electrical, roof, structural issues, knock on wood, most of the equipment turned back on. When we bought it, we didn't even know if the equipment would run.
Wow.
And so it was getting it back up and operational. And I think the employees that came back saw that there was a serious effort to rehabilitate the facility and make improvements, and a couple of pieces of equipment that were needed as well. But it was literally a complete makeover of the facility. And while we were then going, because we were very fortunate towards the end of 2011, for the year 2012, we got a contract with J.C. Penney's to deliver a very large order by that fall. And so we focused very heavily on that to get that done. It was like 100,000 units going to 1,000 stores. And I'd like to say we were making Thanksgiving dinner for 500 in a kitchen under full remodel. And everybody worked so hard, and we got it done. And it was a lot of pride in seeing that all happening. And that helped get us off the ground. And, just every day there'd be a call. So carding machines are on, the looms are running, the different pieces of equipment coming to life, and just the engagement. And we were also very, very blessed with a great deal of publicity, and national publicity that I was shocked. I thought, well, the Star Tribune will probably do an article in the Faribault paper, and maybe we'll be, one of the local TV channels will cover this. But NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, USA Today, we were, it was a bit overwhelming. It was certainly it was helpful because it got the name and the brand back out there. But the hard work really hadn't begun. I mean, of what we were doing, but, finding out what that is. And one quick story. So our first one was the NBC Sunday Evening News. It was in, I think, October of 2011. And we had a website up, and we had very limited number of items you could purchase. And so it was a very nice piece. It was a 2-minute, it was not a 10-second mill opens in small town Minnesota. It was a very elaborate piece. And I went into our controller's office. I said, we should check the website. I bet we had to have had a bump in sales from NBC. It was, I believe, $140,000 of sales from with limited, SKUs on our website. And then we got all these cards and letters and people reaching out, and that inspired other networks and other news organizations to want to come and do stories and hear about us. In fact, somebody came from Japan for an article they wanted to do. So again, the power of the brand. If it were Paul and Chuck's blanket company, nobody would have covered it. But because it was Faribault Woolen Mill, 145 years reopening manufacturing jobs in the United States, it resonated greatly, and we were certainly the beneficiaries of getting that out there and getting some opportunities to help us, get off the ground.
So, changing subject just a little bit here, but obviously well-established business, an industry that's been around for a while. How are you guys staying adaptable and open to change? And then, are there any specific strategies you guys are using to remain innovative in this industry?
Well, yes. I think in the business world, change is constant, and you just have to be ready to change. Now, a lot of the equipment in the building, and at one point, the mill produced, it said, over half the wool blankets sold in the United States. So this was a facility of scale. So a lot of equipment. Had to start from scratch, the cost would have been prohibitive, but everything was there. So we didn't have to do a lot of equipment, but the adaptation was in large part, some of it was just simply getting the doors open and off the ground, but was then what were we going to make? I mean, obviously blankets and throws, but styles. Obviously, there's a huge archives of old styles, and finding out what resonated and what we would get out there. But then new creations and being innovative and not just making the old stuff, but what were some new things we could do that would resonate with the consumer. And so a lot after that, and then the world had changed too. The internet was now a part of our world, and that direct-to-consumer piece, and try to bring that to bear. And then what other channels are there? Of course, there's wholesale channels, and how, who did we want to reach out to? We're a brand, and so whatever we make, we want our name on it. We weren't just a contract manufacturer, although we do contract work for the U.S. government, for the military, and that's been since World War I and World War II. We have no way of proving that, but the story's always been that the odds were during the World Wars, a soldier carried a blanket that came out of our mill. And so that's quite it's humbling when you hear all this stuff, and knowing that we're stewards of these folks. But getting back to your adaptability is, taking something that had been very successful in its day, things that changed. Part of the reason it closed is everything went offshore for, cheap stuff. And so along with that went, a generation of workers. And so the people that came back were later in their careers. And so then just trying to find, you can't just go down the street and hire someone from the mill down the street, because there's not a mill down the street. So how do we deal with that and adapt to that situation? And we have over time replaced some old equipment with brand new stuff. And over time, we'll slowly do that because this equipment is not inexpensive. And so, but a little bit at a time, and continuing to make improvements. And to your, to the question of adaptability, I just think anyone in business knows that you've got to keep your eye on the ball and be prepared to, what does the consumer want? One of the things we did, I can't remember the exact year we did it, but we made a map of Lake Minnetonka. We have looms called jacquard looms that can weave, very complex things like that. And that was a huge hit. I mean, it's very personal. If someone lived on the lake, or they used to live in it, or they grew up, or whatever, it was like, we found something here. So other lakes could be golf courses, ski areas, things that are personal to people, and our ability to, create things that people, like. And then we got a license with peanuts because, of course, Charlie Brown is from St. Paul, Minnesota. So, having that and tying that into Minnesota. Hams beer. We've got a license with Miller's Coors to, so we have the Hams Bear, from the land of sky blue waters. And so try to capture the Minnesota. And then we also got a license with the U.S. Olympic Committee. I think we all think back to 1980 and winning beating the Russians. And so it kind of feels like Team USA is, and Herb Brooks from Minnesota. So,
yes.
Try to bring all that stuff together and continue to be innovative, because we can do different things. There's things that they didn't do back in the day that we, like I say, like the flags and other complex things we can do are really, and like the Charlie Brown, it might, we have Christmas things for that, or Halloween, or football season with Lucy pulling the ball up when Charlie's Brown's trying to kick the ball. So, those are all fun things, and they people love that. And our stuff is, heirloom quality. It's really, really good stuff. And it's not inexpensive. So it's not if you wanted to buy a cheap blanket from overseas, you could pay a whole lot less. But we believe that, ours is, we have the authenticity and the brand and love for that. And I just want to add this: when we've had warehouse sales, or we've done things where we've sold seconds and things, if the item doesn't have our label on it, people won't buy it. They say it's got to have the label on it. They want the Faribault label.
That's great. And I can tell you're definitely really passionate about this business.
Oh,
that's cool to hear, Paul. So would you mind sharing with us just a glimpse into the future plans and goals that you have for the business?
Sure. Well, it's, to me, business, it's just one foot in front of the other. You continue to grow. I mean, we feel, a lot of the work that's been done to date has been, getting it back on its feet, growing it, learning what works, what doesn't work. And we feel the brand is, we're, to say we're just scratching the surface, maybe a little bit much, but I mean, we feel there's huge opportunity for growth here, and to grow. And with that, the growth will require, a capacity, the need to grow capacity, and to grow capacity is meaning people, and finding people that we can have the talent to run these different things, because we're, as a vertical mill, meaning we start with a bale of wool and we do every function under our roof. So it is taken from that wool to the final product, and so it's not like we outsource. We have supply chain partners we can work with, but we are learning to, we're learning to grow the business. And then, again, from the direct to consumer part, what other things can we do to attract more customers to our website and to introduce them to that? We got a couple retail stores. We do the military. We've got some great wholesale connections, and the more that gets out there, the more the brand gets out there. Sometimes it's just patience too. It's, you can't go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. This is not a race car. It's, it's slow and steady, because if we went to 60, I'm not sure we could, the car might fall apart. I mean, we have the ability to go that fast as we like, but we're creating the ability to get there. And so it's twofold: increasing our recognition in the United States. I mean, we have from our website, we see people coming from all over the world too, looking at us. But it's a U.S. based, a primary U.S. based. But it's growth and learning and patience and little trial and error.
Yeah, no, you've shared a lot there. And so knowing that this show, right, is directed towards people that might be in their first few years of business or maybe just getting started in business, do you have any final thoughts or words of advice you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, yes, I do. I think, if you're doing something, you obviously have a passion, and just remember your passion. And doing this can be lonely. And so I think having a business coach or a good board of directors, or being involved with a group or cohorts of people that can help, kind of be, if you don't have a formal board of directors, people that can help you talk through the issues. Because you sit down with people. I did that many years ago, got involved with a group called Tech, and I think it's called Vistage. It was invaluable to me to be able to go sit with people and say, oh yeah, I've been through something like that, and let me give you some thoughts. Or something, you could pick up the phone, and just knowing you have a support group. Of course, your family's there, but you're living this every day, and to have that, and just being patient, and learn, be curious, and have that. I think most people that do this it's like failure is not an option. I mean, if you want to be entrepreneurial, I mean, it's risky. You're stepping out on a branch, away from the trunk of the tree. It can be a little scary, but if you're passionate about what you're doing, your opportunities are boundless in many ways. And so I just think lean on others, be patient, be to me the passion. And one thing I have found is that if I'm kind of stressed out, and whether it's a bad day or whatever, it's like if I give a tour to somebody at the mill, I just go take someone on a tour and I tell the story, I end up coming back reinvigorated, reminding myself why I'm there. Because you can get lost in the stuff that happens during the day, and you're like, ugh. Then you remind yourself why you're there, why you did this, and the passion you have for it. And I think that can help carry you through.
That was great. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today, Paul.
Thank you. I really appreciate it and enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, and it was really special, right, meeting you and hearing about your journey with this business and the business itself. And so to everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.